Hello and welcome to a special edition of Talking Movies from Singapore. I'm Tom Brooke. In today's programme, we take stock of the state of cinema in this bustling city-state.
What I like about Singaporean cinema is the humidity and the heat and the hotness of it all is delicious.
Just like its food, there's a rich variety of stories to be told from this island nation.
I think we are really a melting pot of different cultures, and we take pride in that.
Could we be witnessing the start of an exciting new era in homegrown filmmaking that's already making an impact internationally?
I think that getting our film out into the world is not only good but quite necessary.
What films do Singaporeans like to see? And what are the local movies catering to their tastes?
We have our own story, and we actually enjoy our own story.
What concerns the authorities when it comes to images that are brought to the screen? What's forbidden and why?
I don't self-censor a lot when I'm doing my movies, but I do worry about the rating.
All that and more in this special Singapore edition of Talking Movies. Singapore is a small country with a modest population, just over 5 million, but it is strong and vibrant, and it has a rich and diverse cultural heritage. And this island city-state has a long history of making movies and watching movies. Singapore is a cosmopolitan mix. Chinese are in the majority, with Malays and Indians as significant minorities. Cinema is a binding force. Films can be seen at some 200 screens, both movies from around the world and a small number made locally.
Singapore cinema is at the heart of Singapore identity. Cinema has been in Singapore from the early years of its founding. It will continue to be a part of making meaning, place and identity in Singapore.
Although many of the pictures being shown are from Hollywood, there are several local filmmakers making an impact both in Singapore and internationally. The new poster boy is 29-year-old Anthony Chen. His film, Ilo Ilo, set in Singapore, had a rapturous reception and won a key prize at the Cannes Film Festival in May. And his picture is Singapore's official submission for the Oscars. It is generally viewed as a masterful first feature.
阿公 ，please， 我给你了我的 pet chicken， 请保佑陈老师中福利。
Ilo Ilo is a portrait of a family, struggling through the 1997 Asian financial crisis. The mainstay of the film really is the relationship between a 10-year-old boy and that of his Filipino helper who has just arrived from the Philippines to work in the family. I think that very, very much mirrors the phenomenon that's happening across Asia, not just Singapore, but in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, and Malaysia, where you have got dual income families, where you have got working, middle class parents, and the parents are left, and the kids are left at home, with a helper from Indonesia or the Philippines.
Anthony Chen's grandparents come from China. He is a product of the local culture. Although he's been living in London in recent times, he sees himself and the film he's made as Singaporean, albeit one with universal appeal.
I think most of it is distinctive Singaporean. My experience at festivals, my experience of showing the film outside of Singapore, everyone tells me that we've all heard about Singapore. It's like the Switzerland of Europe, isn't it? It's very clean. Everyone is very law-abiding. It's corrupt-free. It's affluent. And there's so much progress and development in this country. But no one has an idea of how people really live. All these housing estates, what's the social fabric really like? And I think this film actually does that. It opens your eyes, it opens your gaze into this world, into how do Singaporeans really live.
Anthony Chen's film is just the latest celebrated picture to emerge from a long-established local movie industry with a checkered history. Singapore's first films were made in the 1920s, but cineasts, when they look back, will often focus on a particularly fertile period referred to as the Golden Age, beginning in the 1950s.
It was a time that was dominated by two filmmaking studios. I think between them, they must have made about 300 or more films, most of which were Malay films. So that was really the high point of filmmaking as an industry in Singapore. It went up until early 1970s, when there was a decline in the filmmaking industry.
Bringing the film industry back to life in those bleak times was Eric Khoo, a pivotal figure in Singapore cinema. Me Pok Man, his first film, released in 1995, was instrumental in reviving the industry. He has since made 5 other pictures. He's celebrated at home and internationally. Me Pok Man wasn't a depiction of shiny modern corporate Singapore. Its focus was the underbelly, and it impressed critics with the way in which it told of a relationship between a prostitute and lonely noodle seller.
爸爸以前煮米波。
知道我阿爸，知道他过世了。
I wanted to create a story about two, left field individuals, disfranchised. Nobody cares about them, nobody loves them, but in some strange way, as tragic as the landscape is, there was real love.
有没有朋友？
不需要朋友。
As dark or as macabre as, people often, I made it and they come up to me and say, why do you make such a dark and depressing film, right? For me, it's more of a great romance, in a sense. And I think it was relevant because for a long while we hadn't seen Singapore up on the big screen, and what was important for us also was that the film could travel out. It kick-started the industry again.
Eric Khoo has helped develop a new generation of filmmakers, directors like Royston Tan, who's made 4 vivid features dealing with issues such as juvenile delinquency, and has made musical melodramas. This soft-spoken filmmaker, Bu Jun Fong, has also become a leading light in Singapore's new batch of directors. Several of his films deal with an inescapable aspect of life for young men in Singapore, the 2 years of mandatory national service. His debut feature, called Sandcastle, was shown at the Cannes Film Festival. It touched on Singapore's past.
爸爸以前是不是跟共产党有关系的?
Sandcastle primarily is a coming-of-age story of a young man who finds out that his late father used to be a political activist and a detainee in Singapore. I was trying to parallel the idea of personal memory, that of his family, and of his grandmother who is slipping into dementia, and of social memory, what we in Singapore choose to briefly remember or choose to forget.
Scholars see filmmakers like Bu Jun Fong and Anthony Chen as quite different from directors who came before them.
It's a younger generation that seems very concerned about Singapore, its history, change, urban development, modernization, and what this means in terms of loss. And I think a lot of this younger generation of filmmakers are attentive to this idea of loss. And they seem to be making films that are very highly researched, films that are probing, films that go beneath the surface and try to uncover the things that progress and nation building have submerged.
Although these directors are having an impact at film festivals outside Singapore, there's progress yet to be made.
For me, ultimately, it'd be wonderful to have a film that could really gain big market share, and I think that is the one dream. It's I think we've somewhat covered the festival circuits. We've had pretty good releases outside, but more so art house, sort of spaces. But we just need, I think, that one hit.
Films made by Singapore's auteur directors like Eric Khoo enjoy a strong following locally and with art house audiences around the world, but it's not exactly commercial cinema. The man who triumphs in that respect here in Singapore is Jack Neo, who's directed some 15 features. He's an interesting character who became known for his cross-dressing roles as an actor on TV. This comedian-turned-director has been shooting his latest film, an action picture called The Lion Man. It depicts brotherhood and camaraderie in the story involving rival traditional dance troupes. It's one of the most expensive films in Singapore's history. Jack Neo has long peddled comedy.
I think people like to go into the cinema and have a good laugh. Sometimes they can laugh at other people's part. Most of the time, a movie it make you laugh ourselves.
Jack Neo's most recent film, Our Boys to Men 2, focused on young men in the Singapore military. It's entertainment full of pranks, a comedy that really engaged an audience. It triumphed at the box office. Although Jack Neo's films have humour, they often touch on parental, societal and political matters.
I use the comedy show to package the movie, and people know that they go inside, they are going to have a good laugh. And sometimes I found that through humor and you can actually deliver the message easier.
What is that message? The subtext in Jack Neo's films can be subtle, other times not at all. There are moments in Our Boys to Men 2 which resemble a military recruitment commercial.
As I walk on this path again, in my uniform,
I was the regular officer in the army for about 8 years. I know the importance of the national service. Because of this, I think that I should say something for the national service. Yeah.
Jack Neo is irreverent with his humour, but not in any way anti-establishment.
I often find Jack Neo's work to be exactly like that. They tend to be critical on the surface, but ultimately the message wraps audiences back into the larger national story. So in a sense, it does have a conservative function, in that it brings audiences into full acceptance of the status quo after having had fun criticizing in quick ways.
Coming up in Talking Movies, what concerns the authorities when it comes to images that are brought to the screen? What's forbidden and why?